Hello, all. It's time for another episode on Lone Oak Farms. And we've been waiting for the crop to be mature. We just put on our last bit of fertilizer. So it is time to prepare for windrowing. And you'll notice it's about 8 o'clock in the evening here. And I think our windrower is basically ready to go, serviced and ready to go. Just a humble little windrower, but it's similar to the ones they use on the farm today, which is why I have this less than ideal mod kind of in use in the game here. So I'm gonna just take it out. Actually, I should be going out this other door. Oops, I can't even hardly drive it from the keyboard drive. So I'm gonna take it back over here where we can open the field up and get ready to do some windrows. I tried some things on my computer to see if I can improve the frame rate. Yeah, I think that's a little better. There was some settings for, was a multi-sample anti-aliasing. I had it really up high. I'm not sure what all that stuff does, but I turned it down. So, we probably we could get started at any time, even though the sun hasn't gone down. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. And I want to show something on this particular windrower that I built into it, if you will, to kind of simulate grass seed farming. If I just open the help menu, we're going to notice something here. If I just take this off of here, is right Control G, grass seed windrow turn on. So this could be a regular mower, just to mow grass down or create hay or what have you. But right Control G is going to allow this to put down a special windrow for grass. Now, when I say special windrow, it's really only the dry grass windrow versus, when we typically cut grass, it would have a grass windrow. So instead of seeing the green windrow, you'll see kind of a light green windrow. Now, maybe nobody cares, but with the grass seed mod that I have in here, I have the combine set up so that it recognizes the lighter green uh, uh, grass, the dry grass, if you will. There maybe would have been a better way to do this. I figured that was a reasonable compromise. We could set it up, and I'll just get it ready here. I'll hit right Control G, and we'll turn it's on. I know it says turn off, but that means to turn it off. So when we do our first little bit of cutting, you'll see that it puts out kind of the same windrow that you would have after you tedded it. That kind of makes sense. So, and kind of on that, I want to hop out of game real quick. We'll maybe just turn it off here. We got plenty of time. There's only 2 fields to windrow, and this thing moves pretty quick. So I want to go to the script that kind of runs it and just look at it in here a little bit. I don't know how well people can see this. This was a script I threw together to do this. I'm not going to go over it in detail. Most of it down here is, getting it to work, turning on and off with a toggle, basically telling it, hey, don't just mow it, turn it into basically the tedded grass texture, the dry grass texture, if you will. But I have something in here that is very specific to grass seed that when this is turned on, you are punished if you cut a grass seed swath in the middle of the day. I think it was on our last video for Lone Oak. I tried to explain some of this, and I don't know how good a job I did, but when we windrow grass for grass seed harvest, it's usually always done at night. About when the sun goes down to when the sun comes up, give or take, depending on what you're doing. And the reason for this is that is when the dew tends to come out here locally. That tends to be when the grass stalks are tougher and it holds on to the seeds in the inside the grass better than it would if it was broad daylight. If it's in the middle of the day, you pick up a strand of grass and you're going to notice that the seeds can be really easily shaken out oftentimes. So that's the reason it's cut at night, because it's tougher and it holds on to it better. And being that most farmers, they want a decent yield and they want to hold on to as much of their crop as they can, they are willing to sacrifice their sleep and try to cut it at night, and then of course it'll combine it during the day. So what I have here to kind of simulate that dynamic is there's a shatter factor, and basically it describes it here. So if you do this, say at 1 o'clock p.m., kind of in the early afternoon, if you will, it's a zero point 0.7. And kind of what that means is you'll only keep 70% of the windrow that you otherwise could have had if you would have cut it at the appropriate time. So there's like a 30% loss. And as the day goes by, if you do this, at the hottest part of the day, typically 4 or 5 p.m., thereabouts, you're going to pay a heavy loss, because that's probably when a lot of seeds are going to be falling out of your windrow just through the cutting process. Whereas if you do it during the night, you see all these ones, it's going to let you keep the whole windrow that you. Now, I set it up kind of this way, so if a player really wanted, they could adjust this if they wished. Um, and this doesn't hold true for all grasses out there. Oh, there was a type of grass called Highland bent that I remember, bent grass, if you will. That's was very tough grass, and you could cut it any time of the day. It never mattered. And furthermore, it was so tough, it was very hard to thresh. So a lot of times, and you may find this very strange, but it wasn't uncommon in the area that there would occasionally be harvests where the farmer would go over the field 3 times, meaning you would combine, let it spit out the back of the combine into another windrow. You would come right behind it again with the combine, pick it all up again, thresh it again. It's very typical nowadays to see this done at least twice, and I know I've heard of it 3 times in the past. So it's extremely hard to thresh. So of course, anything that's that hard to thresh, you can cut at any time of day, and there shouldn't be any consequences. But for things like fine fescue or ryegrass or tall fescue, most other varieties, you're going to want to do it in the middle of the night, kind of like this. So all this is just a script. The player is penalized if they choose to cut in the middle of the day. Um, they still could, and truth be told, you can cheat and get around this by cutting it as grass, tedding it, or whatever. But this was just something I put in here just to inject a little bit of realism into the game. And another thing too, this works in harmony with the Seasons mod, because that has something in there where if a rainfall comes along or hail, that there is a reduction of your swaths. Whether it is straw or grass or dry grass, um, it has something in there that it will reduce it over time while it's raining. And that's happened to me a couple times in game, and it can really be debilitating. It'll get rid of quite a bit of your crop, but it isn't totally unrealistic, that it would do that. I mean, that is an effect in real life. What would happen, if you had an extended period of rainfall and you had your crop laying on the ground out there. I think I've described it in another video. If your seed in the windrow sprouted, you were toast. There was no way you could harvest that. Once it sprouted, it's no longer a viable seed you can sell. So your crop, it can be markedly reduced, especially if there is a lot of rain and it's a warm type of rain. Anytime you get heat and water, something that would just germinate it easily. I think if it was cold, it'd be a little tougher to do. but it's pretty cool to see the seasons mod kind of work in conjunction with it that way. That was just kind of a side bonus of the seasons mod, if you will, totally not planned, but definitely something realistic, even for grass seed. So I realize I'm just staring at a boring chart here. That's the only part we'll look at here. We'll go back in game. Our time has advanced a little bit, so we're going to crank this up. And even though it is still during the day, I think the sun is up. It hasn't even faded yet to sunset. We'll just get going and get him working on the field. May as well, right? Now, I've typically done a course play because it remembers everywhere there's a windrow, and I can set the combine later to the same course. So what we're going to do here is set up a course. We'll put it on field work, and I think that's the one we want. We want for field number 35. I believe that's an okay working width. Okay. Oh yeah, it's telling us how wide that is. Except it's pointing to the back of the machine. We want to start over here. We don't care about returning to first. We'll do. I've typically, and I think I've kind of jerry-rigged this thing a little bit, so it will do many rounds. I've tried to do 6 rounds, I believe. There's no islands in this field, so we'll leave that off. But if I give 6 rounds, what that allows is for the combine to easily turn around when it's going back and forth. So I try to give it as much room as we can. And I'll get this going here. In real life on Lone Oak, we tended to go round and round in the fields. I'll just pop this into here, and I'm going to come out here. I'm not sure where the field starts, but maybe I'll just get out and show. This is, if you see it there, that is it looks like tedded hay. And you could, if you wanted to, right here, bale it, but that's kind of what that script, will do, it's doing what it's designed to do. And it should be giving us a full windrow, not just a partial. So I think this is right at the starting point. Pardon my very poor driving skills. I won't say I was the best windrow operator when I did it in real life either. Let me also, I think there's a field speed. I'm going to knock that down. We'll put it maybe at 8 miles an hour. It'll go that whole rate. Let me just see if I can start. Oops. First. I'm going to call this 35 swamp. That'll be something we can come back to later as we combine it, and it'll follow this exact same course. Kind of doing this on a cloudy evening, which would have been typical in real life. Here locally, incidentally, this particular June in 2022, we've had quite a bit of rainfall, which kind of reminds me of back in the day. The past few years it's tended to be a bit drier, but I remember many times years ago when it would be wet almost all the way up until we started winter before it would finally dry off for the summer. Oh, and one other thing while we're looking at it here, I uploaded a little modding video too, so others can see how to do it if they're interested. I removed the color mask for all the flowers out in the grass field. So you'll notice all it has left in it is just a few white daisies. Maybe at some point I could even get rid of those. because you wouldn't typically have those out in a grassy field, but I think that's the original texture. So I'm kind of glad to get rid of all those extra colors out there because it would imply we have a whole bunch of weeds, which typically, of course, you would not. Let's take a look too at this course. Yeah, that's a pretty decent course. Yeah, I have a series running on Farm Sim 15, and I gotta say, course play really improved between 15 and 17. You know, just looking at a course like this, it's not a square field, and it really does a pretty good job covering all of the area. I think when it comes through on the second round, we're gonna notice that it skips a little bit, you know, like on the corners. But by and large, I think it pretty well will cut the entire field just like we would expect or want it to. Not so in Farm Sim 15. You know, in Farm Sim 15, it would do a pretty good job on the internal part here, but a lot of times it left something to be desired on the outside rounds. So here's maybe where I can wish for an option to speed up or do a time lapse, but kind of like I've mentioned before in some of my videos, I don't get bored very easy, and I kind of enjoy this. It brings back a lot of memories, even like I say in a less than perfect swather. You know, I look at this thing, I really appreciate that it's available, but I wonder if it was carried over, you know, between several versions of Farming Sim. And you know, like I look at this, this needs to be fixed. You know, you look at those. There is no PTO shaft coming off the engine to run these mowers in here. You can see it's just you know, hookups with the hydraulics, and there's the hydraulic thing spinning around and around. So whoever set up this mod must have noted it as if it was a PTO shaft. So there's no way in real life those, you know, would be spinning around like that. So I maybe need to do a little surgery on this windrower to kind of fix that and just have the hoses sitting there kind of like normal or whatever. But for now they're turning, so we'll just pretend we don't notice that. You know, it does have this part back here turning, which is kind of a nice touch. Let's see, while I'm looking at it, just kind of look and see what the guy's hand is on. He's kind of got it hiked up in the air, so there must be something telling his hand to be, oh yeah, there's kind of a lever there. Isn't on it the best, so maybe that's something else I could fix at some point. But like I say, it's imperfect, but I appreciate it for what it is, namely because it looks similar to what they use in real life, although they use John Deere's now, you know, where it have a mower platform, cutting it up using high-speed mowers or whatever up here, takes a lot of horsepower to run it, and then puts it down in a squat. You know, kind of the last video I visited about that kind of at length, how some of the technology has changed a little bit on this over time, and this is now kind of what we have or what's being used up on the farm. And I don't know what the scale width on this is. It maybe that's 14 feet. I really couldn't tell you. I think that's kind of what's used on the farm now, is 14 feet, and that puts down plenty of foliage, you know, to even keep a big old combine busy. Maybe I can zoom up here. It seems like that's kind of a loud mower. You know, ordinarily in Farming Sim, I know that there are some people that are playing style, they will literally play all night long, even though it's dark, doing this, that, and the other. I don't know, you could do that, but this here, actually, there's a real reason now for doing stuff in the dark, if you will. So I think now, I mean, just it's kind of getting steadily darker as we go. And, I've had gaming sessions with this before where, I mean, if you own a significant chunk of all of these fields, you could be working at this a while, including in multiple nights, just to get it all locked down. And I'm trying to remember, on the farm, it seemed like it would typically be a couple of weeks, laying down the whole farm, depending on how many windrowers we had and how busy we were able to keep them going. Because there would always be breakdowns and that kind of stuff. This this brings back so many memories, and I'm just thankful now I at least have a reasonable frame rate. And as I look at these fields and I see kind of the edges of them, maybe when we bring the plow in, whoops, I don't know what that was about. I think these fields need to be plowed so we're not getting as much grass out of it as maybe we had wished. So maybe this fall we can replant. Maybe I'll extend the borders just a little bit to get the size of the field kind of out to where they are currently. But I'm sure sometimes that extra little edge is left so that, your machinery has space to turn around and whatnot, depending on what you're trying to do with it. And these windrowers, by the way, if I can hop in cab just for a second, it has a steering wheel, obviously. I think in one of the videos, I talked about the old John Deere, I think it was an 800 or a 830. I don't remember the serial number exactly on it, if that's called a serial number. But the way it was steered is it had a trim steering, which only turned the machine just slightly, very slightly. So it was designed for, when you'd be driving in the field and you needed to just steer just a little bit to keep the edge of your header on the grass, you would use the trim steering wheel. But it was not adequate for turning a corner. So when you came up to the end, in order to cut a square corner, that kind of thing, then you would switch to sticks. You had two of them, one on either side, and kind of just like steering a bumper car at the fair, you could turn the thing literally on a dime. It would just turn circles. So that's what you used on a corner. Well, with these machines here, and this is similar to the John Deere ones that they would have, I presume, you have the same functionality of those sticks built into this steering wheel. So I don't know if anybody watching this has ever driven one of these windrowers, but you learn very quickly that when you back the thing up, it behaves very differently from when you're backing up a car or a truck or a tractor or any other thing with conventional steering. It is totally different. It's totally backwards, and that's something the operator has to learn, pretty quickly, or you're going to be having trouble all night long. So for example, like we're coming up to a corner up here, and if we were to back up, in order to turn the entire machine towards the right, you would steer the steering wheel to the right even while you're backing up. And whereas in a car, that's just counterintuitive. We would be doing it the opposite direction. But like I say, if you did that in here, it would be a disaster. You would go the opposite way that you really wanted to go. Just was something to get used to, and occasionally it would catch you up tight. Usually in the field, you could kind of get in the swing of things and get used to it. But there were other times more kind of out of the field, where it would catch you. If you were trying to back it up onto blocks or something, to do some work on it, and you had to steer it a certain way, that's kind of when it could catch you really off guard. it was just something to get used to, and eventually you get the hang of it. And then when you go back to your car, then you got to be careful there because you don't want to steer it into the side of the shed or something, because obviously it's going to behave quite a bit differently. But I do kind of miss those old style windrowers. Those were a lot of fun. They were uh, they were old machines even when I was out there on the farm, and really they were old technology even at that point. But they were great to learn on. I didn't mind being out in the outdoors with no cab. It was nice having a cab too. You could listen to radio or whatever, but there was something nice too about just being out under the stars or whatever weather. Typically it was nice weather when we did it. Nice evenings. You usually could see the stars, moon, whatever was out. It typically would be clear. Sometimes could be cloudy, but we never did it in the rain. At least not that I recall. You want the dew to toughen the grass up so you can cut it, uh, but you don't really want to have a lot of water on it. It's okay to have the dew, but if it rained, even though you could in theory do it, the problems outweighed the benefits, very quickly. The problem being that you were taking a whole lot of water and stuffing it into a windrow and leaving it in a place where it would be hard to dry out. Just the regular dew, I mean, that would dry off each day, no problem. To take all that rainwater and jam it into the windrow, well, you're asking for trouble. And it could get other things in there, whether rot or fungus going in there, and so it was just better not to do it in the rain, even if theoretically it could be done. There may have been a few times that there was sprinkles or what have you, but generally it was dry when the windrowers pulled into the field. And back when I worked up there, what did we have? 4 machines going? I think they had a couple nicer machines like the one we're in, that had a cab on it. Then they had a couple, the 800s, that a couple of us drove. So there was maybe 4 machines, occasionally 5, um, but mainly 4. And I don't know what they have up there now. See, they're a whole lot faster. We're even doing it here at 8 mile an hour. And I know if I didn't throttle it in course play, we could be going however fast we wanted to. I think the max infield speed that they have is 14 miles an hour. So I know when I played this on a server, I think I did it at 14. I think in theory you can do it. There's just oftentimes obstacles in fields, and the faster you go, the less reaction time you give yourself, to slow down or stop, if there's something you see out there. These fields a lot of times could have rocks, massive boulders in there, and yeah, if you're clipping along too quickly, well, then you could have an accident. And then instead of sitting in here listening to the radio and getting work done, you'd be outside trying to fix, whatever you'd broken. Been there, done that a number of times, and not really fun, especially if it's a little chilly out there, the grass is wet, and not the funnest way to spend your time. Much better to stay in the saddle and holding the steering wheel. Let me hop back out a cab. I guess everybody can see it's getting darker. I just love the evenings in the game here. Kind of a cloudy night, although I don't think we have any. Let me see here. What's my forecast? There it is. Okay, I'm on the first day of summer, and I think what this means is I have one night to do all the windrowing, and then I'll have one day to do the harvest, and then I'm going to have rain to contend with 2 days in a row. So, but I mean, we don't have that much property in total anyhow, so we should be able to comfortably do it. We should be able to take care of our wheat. Even with the little tiny combine that we have, I don't anticipate any trouble. We should be able to handle all that. and take care of the baling and all that stuff before being done. So I'm not too worried about it. Plenty of time. You know, the only unrealistic thing here is I sit here and look at this view of Mount Hood kind of in the distance. You know, from the farm, we could see that. Um, the unrealistic part is usually by this time of year, the mountain has started to melt, the snow melt, so it wasn't quite as beautiful as it is in here, but I realized changing that would be a mountain of work for the modder. I'm just thankful to see a mountain over there. I think it's pretty cool how Bullet Bill built that into the map. So take it on the forecast. I see that a whole half hour is already clipped by, so very quickly already. So maybe what I'll do is terminate the episode here, and we'll pick it up in another one and continue our windrowing to end. So thank you all for watching, for spending a little time here with me. Thank you for listening to my ramblings and sharing of some experiences I had at Lone Oak Farms and my attempts at explaining some of these things. I'm certainly not the most qualified or the best to try to explain all of this, but I am having fun kind of remembering a lot of these things along with them. Take care and have a nice night or day wherever you're at. Bye for now.